Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I know it has been a while, but it won't be long. I'm going to continue doing these. I promise. A lot of you have asked me about it, but I'm excited this evening. Happy Black History Month to everybody. I hope you are doing things and learning about Black history. Of course, we celebrate our history all year, but this is Black History Emphasis Month. So we'll emphasize it this month. But this evening, I am joined by Dwania Kyles, who is one of the Memphis 13, part of a civil rights family in Memphis and the country and the world for that matter. Welcome, Dwania. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited that it is Black History Month, even though, like you, I am uh, always celebrating Black history, which is really American history. You know, uh,
Yes.
I'm excited to be here, Camilla, with you.
Thank you. And you are one of the Memphis 13, a group of 13 babies, essentially 5 and 6 year olds who integrated the Memphis City schools in 1961. Uh, so tell us about that.
First of all, desegregation and integration probably is the largest social experiment of its kind that has never been anything as big as that ushered in integration in this nation on the largest level. And so that's the first thing. And these are things that I've really been finding out later, after the film was initially released back in 2011, the Memphis 13 documentary. And in answer to Brown versus Board of Education, the NAACP and some of the head lawyers at that time were Attorney Sugarman, Attorney Willis, Dr. Northcross, Deborah Northcross. They started a case with her, and I think she was either in middle school or maybe in high school at that time. I can't remember, but it was an ongoing challenge and an ongoing fight to get the different cities in the South to live up to owning up to the edict of Brown versus Board of Education. They had spent years figuring out how to get around it. And it's so interesting because when you go, we've done a little research, and when we went and looked in some of Mayor Loeb's papers, and just to find how they were reaching out to Georgia and reaching out to other cities and states to see, how are you prolonging it? How can we get around doing this? And so for the NAACP to hunker down and make this happen and say, we'll start with the first grade. Yeah, well, we'll start with the first grade, and in an attempt to slow it down as much as they could, we're only going to integrate or desegregate one class at a time. And that went on for years, anything for it not to happen. So there were 13 of us, 5 and 6 year old boys and girls. We were divided amongst 4 of the public schools here or the city schools. And that 3 of us went to Bruce. That's where I went. 4 went to Roselle. 4 went to Gordon, and 2 went to Springdale, and that was the 13. And I love it because at Gordon, 2 of the students were twins, and she loves to say, I can't remember if it's Sheila or Sharon, but one of them always says, it would have been the Memphis 12. But when they came and asked my mother, and she said yes, she said, but you're going to have to take both of them. You can't just take one. And so she says, and that's how we became the Memphis 13.
And talk about your father, Reverend Samuel Billy Cowles, and his involvement with the NAACP and how that led to you being one of the Memphis 13.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I love to tell people that when I'm telling this story, I always am like, well, it was a love story. My parents were born in the South, but like most Black Southerners, they went to Chicago, to the promised land.
Right.
But My father, who was a minister, who was a pastor, he was in seminary school uh, around about the time of the Montgomery bus boycott. And he was just so enthralled with Dr. Martin Luther King and what they were doing. He was like, I want to go to the South. Didn't know where, but he wanted to go to the South. He wanted to be a part of the civil rights movement, and my mother was on board. She was down for it. And so with three small children, they were like 25 years old, and they had three children under the age of 5. And they moved to Memphis. My father got a church here. He came down, and I say audition. Well, he preached and he was picked, and he stayed at that church until he passed.
At Monumental, right?
Baptist Church,
Mhm.
the Friendly Church on Parkway. Yes, yes, that was it. That was the moniker. And so it's hard to come from a different city and then just jump into what's going on in your new city. Because a lot of times people are like, I don't know who you think you are. You're not going to come in here and just, but I think it was just the timing was right.
Now, were
And
you born in Memphis?
no, I was born in
You
Chicago.
were born in Chicago. Okay.
The three of my youngest brother was born. He was the only one of us that was born here in Memphis. The three of us were born, the three older ones, we were all born in Chicago. And we are stair steps. My brother is 15 months older than I am, and my sister is 15 months younger than I am. And I'm in the middle. And then 6 or 7 years later, my youngest brother came. So he was actually born here in Memphis, and that's where I am right now today, is in Memphis. But they came wanting to be a part of the civil rights movement and just jumped in the deep end, and with the NAACP, and Dad was working on the education committee, and Russell Sugarman and Willis, A.W. Willis, and North Cross, they were already in it. And so he just jumped in, and Maxine, you can't even talk about this without talking about Smith, and I have some great pictures of them during that time and everything.
I would love to see them.
Yes, we'll have to do that one day, and soon. And they just jumped in, and they literally had to knock on hundreds of doors to come up with the 13. One of the 13 didn't know he was coming to the school until the night before, because one of the other parents said, you know what, on second thought, I think I'll leave my child where he is. Andrew Wiggins was one of the Memphis 13 who just happened, the night before. It's like, got the call, because they had people on standby in case something like that happened. But they knocked on hundreds of doors, and you cannot knock on somebody's door and ask them to do something that you're not willing to do. And so A.W. Willis and Dad both had children that were of the right age. As a matter of fact, Fambi's 2 days younger than me. So my birthday is on October 25th. His birthday is on October 27th. So we were both 5, and he and I went to Bruce along with Harry Williams. And so, and I knew Fambi as a little boy, here again, because our parents were immersed in the NAACP. Mm-hmm.
So why did they choose kindergarten, children that young? Do you know how that decision came about? Because we had in 1957 the Little Rock Nine, who were high school, and then we had the year before in New Orleans, Ruby Bridges, who was a small child, but usually it was older children. So do you know why they chose such young children?
Well, we were first graders, because most of us were 6, and Fambi and I turned 6,
right 20, after.
23 days later. But the reason they wanted to do it with younger children was because they felt that younger children had less prejudices. they didn't really know what hate and racism was. And it was really true, unless they had older brothers and sisters. So some of them did, but not the majority. So they felt that the violence that had been attached to Little Rock Nine and the circus that was attached to Ruby Bridges, that we would not have to deal with that if we had younger children, and felt less that people would show up and want to, just treat these younger kids with such hate and animosity as adults, that maybe they would think twice about that. So really, one of the reasons that most people do not know about the story of the Memphis 13 is because it was nonviolent. And we didn't have the drama attached to it, on a large scale, because there was a lot of trauma. But I think trauma is a part of life, and while we did not have the drama and the trauma that they had in Little Rock, and maybe that what Ruby went through, there was still a lot of trauma that we experienced during that process. And of the 13 of us, I was the only one that stayed within that experiment from 1 through 12. So by the time I graduated in the 12th grade, I literally was graduating with some kids that I had gone to school with since I was in the first grade, or since I was in middle school, or at that time we called it junior high school.
So you went from Bruce to what school?
Bellevue, which
Okay.
at that right across the street, and then from Bellevue to Central, which was right up the street,
Okay.
And as I've come to learn in the last couple of years, because when you watch the documentary, you will see that 2 of the students that didn't stay, like even the first year, went to Roselle. And I can remember in 2022, I can remember asking Representative G.A. Hardaway, who went to Roselle later, because I think he's a little younger than I am. I think, I'm not sure. But I said, Representative Hardaway, why is it that the kids who went to Roselle, it seems like they had such a harder time, so much of a harder time there than we did? And he said, because you went to school in a white collar neighborhood. Roselle was in a blue collar. And so people were a little more antsy and vocal, and, that hatred was a little bit, more visible, amongst the teachers, amongst the students, and all of that. And so both of them didn't finish the first year.
Wow. So tell us about your experience being the only or one of a handful of Black children at your school in the first grade. And then I would imagine still being only a handful matriculating throughout middle school and high school, even though I could imagine there would be more children coming in as you went along. But what was that experience like for you?
It was painful. It was painful. A lot of it was painful. I could not use, I could, first, second grade, I couldn't use the bathroom without trying to hold the door, because they did not have locks on them, because especially if I went in and older girls were in the bathroom, forget about that, but they wanted to open the door and see my tail, because Black people were supposed to have tails. And so just the pain of not being able to pee in peace, was devastating. It really was devastating. Half the time you didn't want to go to the bathroom, so you just gonna hold it until you just can't hold it anymore. That was one of the things. And having friends, and whether, especially as I started proceeding, to higher grades, having friends who were your friends one day, but then their older brother or sister saw them playing with you, and so they would say, if you don't start playing with that little nigger girl, then I'm gonna tell mom. I'm gonna
Mhm.
tell mom. And so the next day you want to come out and you're looking for your little friend to play with, and it's not like it's a lot of black kids on the playground to play with. um, so we would come out, and then no, she wasn't playing with me because she didn't want to get in trouble with her mother. So it was really the older people. Like I think I said earlier, I had a first grade teacher. She was in her 20s, she was newly married, and she was kind. But a lot of the older teachers and older administrators, they were not, because they've grown up in that, space of segregation was good. We don't want these little black kids coming to our schools. We don't want this and we don't want that. But
Did you ever have any contact with that teacher again, that first teacher that you had? I think you said her
no,
name was
I don't.
Miss
I
Patrick.
Miss Patrick. Other than seeing her when I was at Bruce, but
Mhm.
not since I left. I have not had, you know, um, as we are, screening the Memphis 13 film, because we don't feel that enough people in Memphis have seen the film,
Right.
much in other places. So one of the goals of the Memphis 13 Foundation, of which I'm president,
Mhm.
is to ensure that we preserve that legacy. And it gives us a platform that we can voice what that experience was like. But all of us experienced it on some level. All of us did. And whether it was just in education, all of us may not have experienced it in education, but you've experienced in some other system of work, of play, of religion, of health, in the different institutions that allowed us to come. Back in those days, I think you went to the zoo on certain days.
Right.
You could go to some movie theaters, you couldn't go to others. You couldn't go to any store that you wanted to go to. And, so the NAACP just set about, just once the schools were done, then we're going to go for the movie houses. Then we're going to go for the courthouses. Then we're going to go. And they just kept going, and they just kept going.
And so I want you to talk some more about the work of the Memphis 13 Foundation and some of the projects that you all are working on now.
Oh my God. We are 2 years old this month, and it's a small group of us. We have about 5 board members and 1 advisory board members.
Mhm.
And really what we did was, Daniel Keel, who actually is the one that came up and created with the creation of the Memphis 13 documentary, and he also is the director. He's also from Memphis, and he teaches law at University of Memphis. And he was in school at the time. I think he was at Harvard Law, and they were studying Brown versus Board of Education. And he came with the question. Curiosity is such a wonderful thing, Camilla.
Mhm.
He came up with the question, what happened to those kids that desegregated the schools in Memphis, Tennessee? Now, that's how the film came about. And I think he started working on it in late 2009 or in 2010 or something like that. And by October 3rd, 2011, 50 years after we had desegregated the city schools, there was a screening the first screening was at the National Civil Rights Museum. And the next night, there was a screening or two at the Malco Paradiso. I think that's what the name of it is. And he basically kept that alive for about 10 years. And then I remember when we were like at the 50th year anniversary of I Am a Man,
Mhm.
and the commemoration of Martin King's assassination, we were having a conversation and basically talking about what could the 60th year look like? What could we do for 60th. So we had a little conversation about maybe we should start a nonprofit, but it was just a conversation. We might have revisited that conversation in 2019. And then I think in 2019, we actually filed, he actually filed the name, the Memphis 13. And, all just with the idea, maybe one day we'll start a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were thinking about that. And in 2019, I'd gotten a call from Dr. Archie Moss, who's a board member, because Daniel's a board member as well. I'd gotten a call from Dr. Archie Moss, who at the time was the youngest principal in the Shelby County School District, and he was at Bruce. And as soon as he came in and understood the legacy, he said, "Oh, we're gonna have a special day for them." Mm-hmm. And October 3rd or sometime in October when he got there, I think he got there like around 2016 or something like that. Mm-hmm. He branded us the Bruce 3, and they had a Because of You, a wonderful program. And then a couple of years later, 2019, he was like, he called me and he was like, "Miss Kyles, we're talking about doing some murals of the Bruce 3. If we did that, would you be able to come?" And I was like, "Oh, because when I was thinking of a mural, I wasn't thinking of anything really big or anything." I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of busy right now. I don't think I can. I don't know if I would be able to make it." I was on a call with one of my coaches, and she said, "You don't wait for people to do things for you. You get out in front of it and you get it done." And so a couple of months later, I called him back. I said, "How did that mural reveal go?" He said, "We had to push it back. We're not going to release it, and we're not going to do the reveal until January 2020. And so I said, "Well, let's make it an event." And we did. Then COVID hit. Daniel and I were having a conversation. I reached out to the director of curriculum for Memphis Shelby County Schools, like around in June of 2021. And because we were coming up on the 60th. So Daniel and I have been having conversations. Should we not? What are we going to do for the 60th? We need to do something for the 60th. And, after I talked to her, I said, "Would you be interested in having a conversation with me about what the 60th celebration of the Memphis 13 could look like?" And she was like, she hit me back so fast, Camilla. Mm-hmm. In less than 2 hours, she hit me back. And I didn't even know until the next day. She hit me back and she said, "Not only would I like to have the conversation, I would like to invite about 6 or 7 of my associates to be on that call." And I'm just saying, from that call to where we are right now talking to you, we have completed 3 murals at the other 3 schools. We also partner, and so Memphis Shelby County Schools are a great partner with us. University of Memphis, Memphis Shelby County Schools, and Memphis 13 Foundation, and the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress gave a grant that we were able to co-create with the Memphis Shelby County Schools and the Memphis 13, a curriculum to be taught in the Memphis Shelby County Schools to 2nd and 5th graders. So we're so proud of that work. But we're also
is the curriculum in the schools now?
Yeah.
Okay,
we did it last year. Now, what that looks like and what that really is, there's still a lot of work to do. There's still PDs to do so that we're all on the same page, because they'll be teaching it in the second semester, in late second semester. So there's still a lot of work that we have to do with it, but just getting that done has been a wonderful process.
And what are some of the things that are in that curriculum? What are the children learning?
Well, they're learning social justice. They're learning that you don't have to be an adult to make a difference in what's going on in the world. They're learning that they are as much value to who people are in the world as anybody else. They're learning about social justice. How do I look at myself? How do I treat other people? They are learning the stories and the history of the people in their own family and in their communities. One of the homework exercises is go home and interview your grandmother or your mother and see what their stories are about school. Were they involved in any, did they get bused? Did their grandmother go to integrated school? And so that conversation, especially since they've taken civics out of
Right.
schools. So to be able to go and have those kinds of conversations is very important, just in terms of nurturing future leaders. So really, how to become a future leader? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Mhm.
So it's dealing with things like that.
Good, wonderful. So the documentary film, The Memphis 13, is being shown this Thursday at
Yeah.
Crosstown Theater, and you can tell us some more about that.
Oh my God. So first of all, let me say we are so grateful. The foundation is so grateful because our mission is to preserve the legacy of the Memphis 13 by using the platform that we have to tell our story, but it's to tell the story so that the healing can continue. Those murals, to go to know what you did, because it went unnoticed for so long on such a large scale. There was some attention given, but for the most part, it was not. So, but here again, it's not just the Memphis 13 story. It's American history is what it is. It's everybody's story. So we're really interested in interactive. And it usually always happens on its own, that as we'll watch the film, and after the film is over, we'll do a Q&A, because 6 or 7 of us will be there, and we will entertain questions from the audience. And inevitably, the audience will start telling us their stories. And so it's really wonderful. But the reason we're so excited, and so we're promoting healing for everybody, not just for us, healing for everybody. And really, because the other part of what the foundation is interested in doing is curating spaces where we are allowed to have courageous conversations with diverse groups of people. Usually when the film is shown, it's either shown to an all Black audience with a few white folk, or it's shown to an all white audience with a few Black folk, or a few other people of other ethnicities. But, predominantly. And we want to be able to start curating it and bringing diverse groups of people together, so we can begin to learn how to listen to each other. Because before we really learn how to talk to each other, we're going to have to learn how to listen to each other. And it's very difficult to listen to somebody and you don't want to hear what they're saying in the first place. So how do we do that? So one of the things, my favorite tagline for the Memphis 13 Foundation is lead with your heart and choose to be kind on purpose. We have got to stop living in the world hating everybody, being mad at everybody. We have got to stop, because it doesn't promote anything but hate and dis-ease, and we're not really understanding that that's really what causes disease. So I'm also in wellness, so that's
Yes, and I was going to talk to you about that too. I know that you have been on a healing journey for quite some time. You coach and teach healing breath work. But before we get to that, I want to give the details of the film on Thursday. It's at 6:30 at Crosstown Theater, and it is free. Is that correct?
It's donation based. So if you want to leave a donation, leave a donation. But no, it's free. So don't not come because you don't have a couple of dollars for it. No, don't do that. Come,
And
come.
it'll be, the film will be screened, and then there'll be a question and
Q&A,
answer.
and then we're special guest, who will be Danette Stokes, who
Okay.
is the president of the UEA, which is the United Education Association. She's going to be there and field some questions, answer some questions. And so we're excited because this is a part of an initiative that we're doing called Look Back, which is the film Launch Forward, which will be Danette talking about what it's a lot going on in this city right now. We just elected or selected a new superintendent, and I think that we should all be working towards ensuring, whatever it is that anybody felt before she was selected, we need to make sure that she's successful, because her success means that our children are being taken care of. And that's what I'm saying. Everybody gets all, we get into these groups and we don't like this and this person doesn't like that person. And we simply just destroy whatever greatness could really happen. We don't allow it. It's not even destroying it. We don't even allow it to happen. So, and to understand things like that. So this will be the kickoff of that initiative. And we're able to use the film to do that and to have these conversations and to hear what people have to say. And we're excited about it.
Wonderful. But I do want to speak about the healing work that you do. And I know that a lot of people who were involved in the civil rights movement, especially people who were very young, I went to the library to hear Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, and you were there too. And she talked about having post-traumatic stress syndrome, having a diagnosis, and still dealing with that all of these years later. So can you talk about your healing work, your breath work, and how that is connected with the civil rights struggle?
One of the things that I am, and I had to get to that, but one of the things that I really am focused on also with the organization, when you talk about leading with your heart, the hormone oxytocin is made in the heart. And, it's one of the most healing hormones in the heart, in the body. We have been miseducated a lot in terms of what health and healing really is, and our role in ensuring that we are healthy. So we basically given that power to somebody else. So whatever it is that they tell us, we just blindly accept it without just digging a little bit. So one of the things that we'll be doing it Thursday night, I'm going to do what's called a heart coherence breathing exercise. And all we're going to do is we're going to put our hands on our hearts. And we're going to close our eyes and we're going to visualize inhaling and exhaling through the heart. And in doing that, what people don't understand is you're resetting your autonomic nervous system. You're allowing the oxygen to go into the brain as well. And there is a connection. The whole body is connected. And we get into the specialists of this and the specialists, that doctor is the specialty of the gastrointestinal, and that one's the lungs, and that one's reproductive. But the body is one body. And those systems work in tandem together, not separate. But that's the way we treat the body. And so to be able to do this breath, and we'll do like 6, no more than 8 rounds, but about 6 rounds. That's a tool that people can take outside of the space. And when they are feeling stress, when they are feeling depressed, when they are feeling anxious, that trauma, I don't know a person on the planet that has not experienced trauma. And the reality is, the longer you live, the more susceptible you're going to be to experiencing some more trauma. Okay. That's not to live in the real world. It's not a trauma-free ticket. Everybody's going, and it's not, am I going to have the trauma? The question is, how do I move through the trauma? How do I move through it so that I can live a happy, healthy, joyful life? And so just opening our hearts and focusing on that, we're going to be creating oxytocin in the body, and that helps to heal the body. So I'm I'm a certified wellness consultant, which means that I have conversations with clients, and I help them make decisions on ways to go about dealing with their health. But what I love, because I don't think we understand how powerful the breath is, even though we know without oxygen, there is no life.
So is there a simple thing that we can do when we feel like we need to center ourselves, placing a hand, taking deep breaths? What is something that anybody can do?
The heart coherence breath is one. They're all different. They're all different. The point is, because I tell everybody, breath work is the first meditation. I don't know a meditation that it doesn't have the focus of breath, because people think that meditation is something that makes the mind go blank. That's never going to happen. The mind is never going to go blank. But what it is I'm not going to allow the mind to just be jumping all over the place all the time. They call it the monkey mind, just all over the place, just doesn't give us a break. The truth of the matter is, human beings are usually in a constant state of flight. What is it?
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight. Constantly. So what that means internally is we are constantly leaking, creating adrenaline and cortisol. And when those two hormones are not used for what they're supposed to be used for, and what they're supposed to be used for is, if I'm walking down the street and I hear some click, click, and I turn around and the person is speeding up their walk and I'm speeding up my walk, and then they speed up some more, I'm feeling like, oh, they're after me. Mm-hmm. So I need to be able to run. Now that's what that's supposed to be for. That's what the adrenaline and that's what the cortisol is for. But we just get stressed out just because I'm in traffic and I got to be at work. And if I'm not at work, my boss is going to be screaming at me. So here I am sitting in the traffic and I'm leaking all of this cortisol and adrenaline. And those are the things that begin to make us sick. The internal environment of the body that our cells and tissues live in. Now I'm getting sick, because I'm leaking it. And when I'm leaking too much of it, then I'm throwing my homeostasis off. So there's no balance in the body. So breath work helps you to center, calm down. I encourage people to spend more time being with themselves, being quiet, doing a simple breath exercise like inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and do that 4 times. I don't think it can get any more simple. And I'll tell you that is a breathing exercise that the Navy SEALs do when they're getting ready to go on, dangerous missions. Inhale, and you never inhale before you exhale. So you exhale, and then I go in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. And I do that 4 times. Girl, when I tell you, you do that 4 times, you have reset your autonomic nervous system. You got you got oxygen that just went to the brain, But what you also really want to do is breathe through your nose. People don't understand the difference in breathing through my nose and breathing through my mouth. And the truth of the matter is, most people are chest breathers. And then, teach people how to get down and really breathe down in the lungs, down. So they call that the belly breath. What we need is really elastic lungs. And they have really said that the less elasticity that the lungs have become one of the markers for telling folk how long a person can live. It is the elasticity in the lungs and the ability of those lungs to just be very pliable.
Well, thank you so much for that. I've always been interested in breath work, and I know that there are so many benefits to it. And I knew that you were an expert on that. That's why I wanted you to share some. But I also want to talk to you before we go about April 4th, 1968.
Ooh. Mm.
Your father, Reverend Samuel Billy Cowles, was on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was assassinated. And on that day, he was coming to your house for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about what you remember about that day?
Well, what's so interesting about that day was the day before we had been at the mountaintop speech.
At Mason Temple.
Mason Temple.
So you were there. You would have been about 12 at that time?
12, I was 12 years old. So Camilla, you have to understand at that point, you know, with that excitement of what was going on. And that was the night that I really first personally met him. And I don't know this story a lot, but he kissed me on my forehead when I met him, and, he was sitting and he was peaceful, and Mom came over to him. You know how all of the ministers are up on the dais after something is over, and they're trying to figure out, okay, so how are we getting him to back to the motel?
And it was storming. Do you remember that night? They said it was storming really bad.
Oh my God. It was one of the most, I remember that. It was one of the most dramatic moments in my life, and after all of that drama and we were sitting up in the rafters. So we were sitting high because, you was always trying to get as far away. You're trying to be grown. So you're trying to get as far away from you as possible, And it was such an electrifying speech that he gave that night. It really was. And it was so dramatic because of the storm and everything. It was the thunder. And I think one of the windows were open and something was clanging. Wow. Just something else, and the energy was just so high. You don't forget moments like that when energy, you knew you had witnessed something. That was very special. And you really don't have a lot of words for. And it was something that I was in need of because, having been a part of the Memphis 13 and the desegregation process, and then we had a cross burned in our yard, when I was like 9 or something. So how do you, that's why I'm saying life is just filled with trauma. So you can't get over one before another one happens. And you think you're about to get over that, but you're still going through it because I was only in the 4th or 5th grade at that point. And then, here I am getting healed at Mason Temple at the mountaintop speech and excited out of my mind. So you're talking about joy and happiness on a level, frequency just off the charts. And then we're at the house, setting up, ready to receive Dr. King, Reverend Abernathy, Jesse Jackson, Andrew Young, all of the guys, SCLC, we're ready. So the joy is just like, woo, it's palpable. And you get that call. I had never seen grown men weep until that night because many of them came to the house. No food was ever served for dinner. I don't know what happened because, they put the kids up in somewhere. And one of the things that I remember more than anything else, and we never talked about it until my father was the chairman of the 30th anniversary of the National Civil Rights Museum and did a book, and my brother wrote in that book. They had him write something in there and he talked about it. I don't know where they had us. I don't know if we were up in the attic, because all kind of folk were coming to the house that night. And at some point, and AD, Martin King's brother, came. And at some point, AD let a sound out. I don't know if it was a scream or a cry. It was a cross between a scream and a cry and a holler. I have never heard pain like that. The depth. Right now, I can talk about it now and not cry. I used to couldn't talk about it. But even right now, I've just got chills all over my body when I go back and I think about that. And I don't care where you were. You could have been in the basement. I don't care where you were in the house. You heard it. And I liken it to, and I know people are going to think this is crazy. I don't know if you ever saw like Godfather 3. When Al Pacino's daughter gets shot and she dies right in front of him. And I think it was so brilliant that what Coppola did was he had Al Pacino fall back on the steps and just scream and didn't put sound to it. When I it brought back AD to me, and I could hear that visual. I could hear AD all over again in my head. It's just like, and every time if I see that movie and I see that scene, I don't see Al Pacino. I hear AD. That's what I hear. And that's why I'm saying I had never seen grown men not just cry, just weep, the sobbing, the sadness. It was just one of the most incredible experiences to go from the height of that kind of joy and happiness to just the bottom of sorrow that, and I was 12 years old. It was crazy.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that you want to share about the film on Thursday or about the Memphis 13 Foundation before we go? I'm so grateful that you were able to join me for this.
And I'm so happy I was too. The only other thing that I really want to say is it's an opportunity for, all of us to see an American story and to participate in a level and make a choice to want to create a better world for our children to live. And when I say a better world, I'm talking about one filled with love and and joy, because that's what heals people for real. That's the real healer. When we learn how to release those chemicals in our bodies, it can fight anything else that's coming at us. So to come out and really want to come out and be there and not come out to be destructive and destroy, but to come out and open our minds, open our hearts, and let's really begin to learn how to listen and talk to each other so that we can really grow into the greatness of who we're capable of being and living the greatness of what we're capable of living. And in closing, I'll just say, lead with your heart and choose to be kind on purpose. Yes, it will be a different world.
And choose to be kind on purpose. Well, thank you so much. And I will definitely be looking forward to seeing you at the film screening. Have a good night. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.